I want to apologize because this video is gonna be a bit different from what you're used to seeing on this channel, and you will probably have to endure my natural accent in order to get my points across more efficiently. Tal vez hasta leo algunas cositas en español y las subtitule, porque, aunque no lo crean, me cuesta un huevo hablar y expresarme en inglés. So if you don't like my accent, I'm sorry, but jodete. I want to clarify from the get-go and before I detail what happened in this invasion that this is not me complaining about the status quo in invasions, ya que muchos de ustedes, hijos de un camión cisterna lleno de putas, son súper rápidos para escribir comentarios sin ver el video. And I promise you, I'll get my point across after I show you the details. While I was recording for my Backhand Blaze video, I ran into a squad of 3 players who were about to enter the Meteor Mother of Fingers boss fight. Right after the invasion begins, I get run down by one guy while the other 2 are coming just a bit further back. Thinking I'm gonna be jumped by all of them, I pull out Weights of Darkness to try and deal as much AoE damage as possible, but it turns out the other 2 guys are mages and could not give 2 shits about proximity. Thanks to a relatively generous amount of latency, I managed to roll my way into safety, because high latency makes people miss things that will normally connect. But since the latency is not high enough to fully dodge spells such as Star Shower or Stars of Ruin, I need to gain as much distance from the mages as I can in order to simply not die by default. More spells such as Dragon Breath are thrown in my direction, and all I can do is simply run for my life and put as much room between me and the mages as possible, while one of the guys applies melee pressure on me. During the whole ordeal, you can also see me going through my menu a bunch of times to try and find the best choice to deal with this chaotic scenario, until I finally decide on taking Rakshasa's Great Katana and hope for the best. I managed to land one hit on a guy, but of course I can't follow through because magia, XD, and I'm forced to retreat to a spot where these spells can't get to me. One guy follows me behind the spot and tries to attack me with his spell point blank. I notice his severe lack of judgment, and I take this opportunity of segregation in order to dispose of him before the others can get to me. Hermoso, un poco menos. It may not seem as much, but fighting 2 players instead of 3 is a million times easier, and after a very nice Bomba Kobe moment and some little maneuvering, I get the second mage, leaving me alone with the melee guy. I try to use the backhand blades, but they get severely countered by barricade shields, so I simply switch to bolas and get the job done. As you can see, this was supposed to be a backhand blades invasion, but doing this invasion with backhand blades would have been maybe not impossible, but certainly extremely difficult. And I needed to change my equipment several times in order to adapt to the different situations. And these 2 guys just shooting spells at me with no thought behind it were an extreme danger to me. Not only that, but I also consume much more resources that are commonly not available in vanilla Elden Ring. Keep in mind that this is seamless co-op, where invaders have access to a larger amount of healing potions and great runes. Co-op phantoms also have access to that, but you get the point. And once again, I don't really want you to misunderstand me here. I don't mind doing all these things, and I'm used to having to do a lot of magic in order to win invasions, but I'm just asking myself, why does it have to be so unnecessarily difficult? If it's already this difficult for a veteran, yes, I know it's fucking cringe, but I'm calling myself like this so you guys can get the point. What is it gonna be like for a new player? You know, someone who wants to try invasions. When you play PvE in Elden Ring, you start from the very bottom. They throw you into weak, simple enemies for you to learn the basics and mechanics, as well as getting a feeling of combat and how you are supposed to face the challenges that the game imposes on you. You even get some tutorial messages explaining to you in plain English how some things work and what are the best options to deal with enemies. For instance, this stance break tip, which is one of the most important ones in the game. In PvP though, it's pretty much, yeah, you can do this. Good luck. The game doesn't even explain to you how the matchmaking system works, you know, the thing that you need to know so you can know who you are invading, let alone that some items don't have the same benefits in PvP than in PvE. Like, for instance, the Dragon Crest Great Shield will give you 20% extra physical defense in PvE, but in PvP it's balls, and it only protects you for 5%. So, whereas using it in PvE will be a great idea, using it in PvP could be accounted for a waste of a talisman slot. not. Same thing happens with another PvE favorite, the Fire Scorpion Talisman, or any other Scorpion Talismans for that matter. They give you more benefits in PvE than debuffs, but in PvP it's the opposite, and you get more debuffs than benefits. They are not worth using in PvP, and nobody tells you this. You are just thrown into some random player's world, and the next thing you know is that you have a moonveil up your ass and 3 dudes are teabagging your rotting corpse. And this is something that you may have experienced when trying to do Varre's questline before the patch, as you had to invade 3 people in order to progress. You didn't need to win or anything, you just had to invade people, but some people complained that they couldn't get any invasions, and that's understandable when they don't fucking know the matchmaking rules to the fucking game. And after some time they just launched a patch where you can just complete it offline. And this clearly tells me how much Miyazaki thinks of PvP. You know, I think it was clearly patched for people who don't have online, but just let me wear my tinfoil hat in peace. Instead of further expanding on this mechanic with the help of Varre's questline to, help newer players get into invading at a comforting pace, FromSoft just abandoned it altogether and left players to fend off for themselves in any way they could. And don't get me wrong, invasions have always been like this, Players always had to make do and find the ins and outs on their own. But when talking about Elden Ring, not only is the game not helpful for getting into invasions, I believe it actively discourages you from invading. Maybe not with a tutorial text that kindly tells you to fuck off every time you try to use the red finger, but by making invasions nearly impossible to win for the average Souls newcomer, or dare I say, the average Souls fan. No es ningún secreto en este punto de la vida de género que los juegos Souls se volvieron mucho más mainstream de lo que eran. Elden Ring sales already speak volumes of it, but FromSoft was clearly prepared for it, as they made sure to give invaded players as many advantages as possible.
I like money.
As invasions seem to run on the assumptions that the invaded players have marginal to no skill, and the invader is an unmatched PvP god. But PvP god or not, trust me when I tell you that fighting multiple players in Elden Ring can be way harder than fighting any of the game's bosses. And the only reason content creators such as myself, Stilovsky, G9, or even Chase the Bro can consistently win invasions is because the skill gap between us and the invaded players is so high that we manage to pull through. And even then, it can become super difficult. Seriously, try testing it out by yourself. Tell 2 PvP players to summon you to their world via red sign and try defeating them both at the same time. If they are competent players and know what they're doing, I guarantee you will not be able to beat them. It doesn't matter how much you try. Numbers advantage in PvP can overshadow skill, builds, and any other trick or tools you may have up your sleeve. Sure, you may win sometimes with gravity or by sheer luck, but that doesn't change the fact that multiple competent people can be literally unbeatable by the average Souls player. Even if we lower the bar and have you fighting 2 or 3 below average or outright incompetent players, the fight will still be incredibly difficult if they maintain the slightest form of aggression and a little bit of caution. And if the players you're fighting know that constant rolling will give them perma iframes on high latency, finishing one of them off while the others chase you around can be nigh impossible, and you'll probably be forced to reset and watch them mockingly heal from afar. Ashes of War and spells make this even more asinine to deal with, as you have previously seen on this video, and to top it off, the host will have more healing potions than you, blue summons, rune arcs, and many things that you don't have. And no, this is not some sort of gotcha moment or realization or breakthrough that we came with, it's just us wondering why. Why did they have to make it so difficult? You need to do so much, and they need to do so little. It's insane, to be honest. And once again, we're not trying to pass it as a complaint. We're just wondering, why? It's baffling. Can you imagine yourself coming out fresh from the PvE into invasions, applying the methods that worked really well in PvE, such as using your Bloodhound's Fang, for example, and the moment you use it, you get absolutely annihilated? And you don't even know why? And that anyone you come across with will just vaporize you because they have the numbers advantage and more healing than you, and they can have more teammates, and you're just gonna feel so overwhelmed. And the moment you finally die, they will start shitting on your corpse and teabagging. No, a new player will hate that experience. And on top of that, their runes are not gonna be in the same place they were when they started invading. It's gonna be somewhere else. Why on earth will they try to do that again? Why would they expose themselves to that? Can you see what I meant when I said that they are trying to actively discourage you from invading? It's a game mode just as valid as PvE and has been a genre-defining feature since the beginning. Why do they seem so adamant to get rid of it? As if it was the worst possible thing to ever exist. We don't know if it comes from a place of wanting to give the illusion that they are trying to maintain some sort of collective, fictional moral high ground that the community has been trying to impose over invasions over the course of the years, or if it's just due to technical and practical issues regarding the network and gameplay. But from a developer standpoint, invaders are nearly treated as garbage. They have no incentive whatsoever to invade or participate in invasions. There are no covenants, no rewards, and, like we mentioned, no help from the game to get into it. The thing that feels like them hawk-tuaing in our face is the fact that both items used for invasions have no distinctive features whatsoever. Both the Bloody Finger and the Recusant Finger do the exact same thing. So why have two of them in the first place? Are they just residual shit that was just left behind when they removed covenants? Is this Miyazaki's way of saying, this is how little we care about you, fuck you? No, I don't think so. Not really. That will be the fact that Blue Hunters have no lore or purpose. If I were to ask you right now, what do Blue Hunters exactly do in the World of the Lands Between? Would you know what to tell me? There is literally nothing for you to say. They have no fucking lore. They just... exist? Because the host needs more help? And speaking of help, do they need more help though? In order to get a blue in your world, you need to be invaded. And in order to get invaded, you need to either summon another player or use the Taunter's Tongue, which is an item that allows you to be invaded when you are alone. In neither of these instances does the host need any help, because they either A, already have help with their summon, or B, don't want any help because they willingly invited invaders into their world for whatever reason. The only reason Blue Hunters exist is for the host to gank the invader with numbers advantage, which is fine by me, like, bring them on. But if you ask me, I don't think that new players that are just getting into invasions will appreciate getting cockblocked by blues every invasion. And the worst part is that we haven't even factored gank squads into the equation, you know? 3 people who sit in a place with no mobs, waiting for one invader just to grief them. Like, imagine if a new player runs into them as their first invasion experience. Oh boy. Y ya me imagino que algunos infradotados mononeuronales en el chat van a poner cosas tipo ¡ay, pero ellos están invadiendo, se lo están ganando, es culpa de ellos por arruinar la diversión de los demás! ¿Por qué no te vas a lavar el orto un poco, pelotudo? O sea, si para vos invadir a alguien que voluntariamente se expuso a invasiones porque invocó a alguien más y están participando en un modo de juego que es parte de la experiencia en general, ¿sería arruinarles la diversión? Por favor, volvé a comentar cuando se te desarrolle por completo el lóbulo frontal. Bobo. And there are even some gankers that will create YouTube channels dedicated to humiliate invaders, regardless of their skill level. Yeah, I don't think these are well-adjusted individuals, if you ask me. If you allow me to use my conspiracy hat at this very moment, I would say that FromSoft are lowering the quality of invasions, so when the day comes that they finally get rid of them in a new installment, like Night Rain for example, not as many people will complain about it, so the voice of those who still support invasions won't be as loud. And we're gonna enter an era of Souls games with no invasions, and that's gonna be funny. They won't be Souls games, but hey, what can you do? It's funny how the motto of Souls games has always been get good for a long time. Like, if you're struggling with the game, you just need to try again, get good, and face up to it, which is sorta what the developers intended since the release of Dark Souls. But when it comes to invasions, the discourse of the majority is not to get good. It's simply to get rid of them. It's like the moment a human factor is introduced into the mix, everyone suddenly gets offended. People talk about how invasions ruin their experience with Elden Ring, when in reality, invasions are part of Elden Ring. It's not that you are playing Elden Ring and some random goober entered your world with some third-party software. It's actually part of the whole package of the game. You are supposed to get invaded if you choose to do co-op. I think this antagonization of invaders and the portraying of invasions as an alien feature to the game is what eventually caused FromSoft to dilute them into a softer experience more and more with each game. And I find it really sad that the constant whining of some skill-impaired goobers who can't beat one player as a team of 2 or 3, has turned what could be a unique multiplayer experience with tons of death into a bastardized mockery of itself that's only there because of tradition. It won't matter how much FromSoft changes them to feed the crybaby needs of the casual player who plays the game for 1 month and never touches it again. It will never be enough for these people, because they don't really like Souls games. They just like co-op experiences. And this just ain't it. Listen, I know I'm making a ton of assumptions here, but they are based on observations I made on the community throughout the years. Balancing the game mode that brings longevity to the game after you have done everything in PvE around the people who only play Elden Ring once and never touch it again will never be a good idea. And I cannot even begin to tell you how demoralizing and indignant it can be when you are defeated by 3 people who barely know what they are doing. Players that will instantly crumble the moment they have to fight by themselves. It doesn't matter if we gave you the key to their house. You are still ill and deserve every disadvantage possible, so little Timmy won't feel bad about not knowing how to properly play the game. And trust me, I know that it sounds a bit unhinged and maybe rude, but I will be lying if I told you that it's not hurtful, to be honest. It's a bit ironic that in a genre where skill and hard work is supposed to be rewarded, the player that is considered by the game as the most skillful, in this case the invader, is reduced to nothing more than a mere inconvenience that needs to be taken care of. Remember, invasions run on the assumption that the invaded player is the one that has less skill, while the invader is supposed to be the one that has more skill. So the developers decided to nerf you just to keep Timmy immersed in his power fantasy. And if this is how it's going to be from now on, honestly, just fucking get rid of invasions. They will be missed, but I'd rather them die now instead of having a future installment where every time you try to invade, a hand comes out of the fucking computer and just crushes your balls or something. Lo que poronga sea.